I believe I was like 8 years old. I was coming home from school. And usually the routine is that my dad picks me up when the school bus drops me off. That day, my dad was not at the front door. The bus driver didn't want to drop me off, so he's like, okay, we'll just come back around after we drop all the rest of the kids off. And so we came back, my dad was still not outside. So he called my dad. He came out to the front door, and right after he got me, he rushed back inside. The TV was on, and there was a guy like with his right hand up is all I remember. And I was badgering my dad. I was like, where's my yogurt? And he was like, give me a second, honey, give me a second, honey. And now looking back, I remember that was President Obama being inaugurated. I had a really great life, and I thank my parents for that. The reason we came to the United States was to continue that, to have a better life, to have even better opportunities. And so I'm trying to fulfill that in my own way. My name is Ariah. I'm 21 years old. I'm currently going into my senior year at Oregon State University. In the United States, it's really interesting because people see me as the black girl, and they don't also realize that I have another part of me, like the Ethiopian part of me, that I speak a different language, I have a different culture. I was born in Ethiopia, and I moved here when I was 9 years old to California with my parents. We moved up here because my mom's side of the family lives here, and so after about a year and a half, we moved. I think a lot of people, my parents especially, were worried. They didn't know how I was going to react. And I had a really great time. I was just reading my books, reading Nancy Drew books. Like, I was very much like a nerdy girl. I already knew English, and I remember like when I was taking like my English placement tests, people were really surprised that I spoke English well. And I was like, well, what did you expect? You know what I mean? Like, just because you heard I was coming from Africa does not mean my English is broken, does not mean that I don't know anything and that you should pity me. I think I know English better than some people here, to be honest. And so it was almost like I was always pushing back on the stereotypes people had of me. The new girl, the black girl. Well, she's whitewashed, assimilated into the American culture. And I'm not afraid to be like, I'm Ethiopian. I'm also black. And so those two blended together, I would say, makes who I am. I used to go to my mom's appointments with her. She speaks English, but obviously not as well as me, you know? Like, she didn't grow up learning English like I did, and so I was a young child trying to translate medical terminology. When you've been in enough of those situations, you kind of realize this is what I love to do, or this is like absolutely hell. Like, I don't want to ever be in this kind of situation. But for me, I found that being in the hospital, being around doctors, it really just intrigued me, and I would just like watch them. I would just like stare at them. Like, and I remember one time I was in one of those appointments, and the doctor was like, so are you always translating? And I'm like, usually, like if I'm not in school and she needs someone to be here, I'll be here. And just that interaction, like it stayed with me to this day. It really stayed with me. And he was like, well, what do you want to be? And I was like, I think I want to be what you do. Like, I want to be a doctor. And he was like, remember that, because you're not always going to have good experiences in the healthcare field. And I've definitely learned that. And he was like, remember what made you get into the field.
So she came in with this unfortunate, so we have also done some x-rays to make sure. And so it's a complicated issue, and it's also a complicated...
Med school is like a whole nother ball game that I've never played. And I think the biggest thing I was trying to do was open a door to a field I've never had. Like, my parents are not doctors. I don't have any close family members that are doctors. And so I was trying to understand, what does med school look like? Because I don't really have any idea. I first heard about med staircase during COVID, like during lockdown. And then a couple of weeks later, I heard from an anesthesiologist at Legacy saying that I did get one of the scholarships to be shadowing her. And I remember being like, don't they just like put people to bed? Like, what am I gonna watch exactly? I don't really understand, but like as close as I can get to the OR, I'll do it. Immediately after I got there, it's like, okay, let's wash, scrub in. Like, we're not joking around here. We're not sitting around for like a 15-minute meeting about what I'm going to see or anything like that. Like, you're showing me the real life experience, and that's what I really wanted. I saw face reconstructions, labor and deliveries, a hip replacement, a burn victim, so many different ones. And she would kind of coach me through what the surgeon was doing. And even the surgeon, like during the surgery, he would be like, intern, like this is what I'm doing, and he would show me. And I was so excited. I was so excited. I was like, this is definitely where I want to be. I saw the first Black doctor last summer when I was in med staircase. It took 10 plus years for me to see a Black doctor. I've seen Black nurses, I've seen Black people working in the lab, but not as a doctor. And the fact that I had to seek that out, the fact that it wasn't just, oh, me going to a doctor's checkup and there was a Black doctor there. It wasn't like that. I was, in the back of my mind, I was like, that's ridiculous. Like, that's really sad. But I think that also fuels me to be the next generation of people doing that. For my biomedical ethics class, we had to write an essay about some type of like ethical dilemma or like some type of issue that we see in the healthcare field. And I did mine on Black maternity death and how insanely high that is, especially in the United States. One of the statistics said that if you're a college-educated Black woman versus, I think it was like high school level or even maybe middle school level white woman, you're more likely to die if you're a college-educated Black woman. And I was like, well, that's ticking all of my boxes. You know what I mean? You think that the higher up you are on the socioeconomic scale, that means the higher up you are to that access. And it doesn't. And like the data is very clear on that. It almost defeats you because I'm trying to work against the system. I'm trying to better myself, but I still know that there is systematic racism. Like that has not changed. It almost just kills you inside a little bit when you see like what Serena Williams went through and like her issues when she gave birth and things like that. It's like, well, is it ever gonna be enough? But I can't give up. Like that is just, it would kill me to give up without fully trying, I think. And so, you know, I really count on the mentors. I really count on God to get me through it because I can't be my own navigation system. And I really have to stress that, like, if you don't have the accessibility, if you don't have the resources, you're not gonna do well in life. I would not have any of this knowledge if it wasn't for the resources around me providing that raw, honest accessibility. Actually say, like, yeah, there's a big demand and we're not meeting it. There's a big demand for Black doctors and we're not meeting it. Like, what are you gonna do about that? And I think the more I talk about it, like I'll call my dad, like when I was doing my essay for the Black maternal death, I would call my dad like, this is happening and this is happening and this statistic, and it's like, I think that helps. I think being constantly speaking about it reminds you how important it is to you, and it, for me, it tells me to never forget that. It tells me to never forget why I'm there in the first place. It's not just my passion because it's my passion. It's my passion because this is my life. It's my passion because I have to change it for those that come after me. I have to change it for myself.